Money's really just a tool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's loaded for all of us. It has a meaning to us. And so what is the meaning that I have? And then having a conversation with our kids about how do they view money, you know? Mm-hmm. Do you have a kid that just sees you pull out plastic and swipe it and think, oh, well, it's this infinite thing out there?
I'll never forget when Gabby was first starting to play like Roblox and her iPad was connected to my Apple Card. I just would never check my bank account. And then one day I decided to check and I saw like all these random charges, but they were all like $289, $370, and they just kind of like, for 2 months it was going on.
Yeah, she was having a good time.
She had no idea. Yeah, but she was young. She was probably like 6 or something like that. I think it was about $1,500 total.
Hilarious. In Brookhaven on Roblox. I love it.
Welcome to Holistic Dose. We've been through the plot twists of divorce, parenting, burnout, reinvention, and now we're doing midlife more honestly and way less BS. Think of us as your unfiltered friends. We're here to remind you that you're not too late or too old or too far behind. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Jeanette.
So today we have Dr. Tavari Brown, a therapist, coach, and a speaker helping high-achieving individuals stop people-pleasing. So we're going to be talking about money and how we can heal our financial wounds and raise empowered kids. So thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here and an honor.
Yeah, thank you. So before we dive in, we figured we're going to play a little fun game with you.
Let's go.
And it's going to be called, is it boundaries or is it budget? Or maybe it's both. So we're going to list off a couple of scenarios here for you. So let's get into that.
Now, just Dr. Brown answering or? Okay.
Yep. And if you want to read some out to her, you can as well.
I didn't print it.
Okay. Okay.
So the answer's no.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's all boundaries, by the way.
So you say yes to chipping in $150 for a coworker's baby shower.
Okay.
Even though you're already behind on your credit card payments. Is it boundaries or is it budget or is it both?
What'd I tell you? It's boundaries. Yeah.
Yep. Your teenager expects a new iPhone every summer.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. How much of us all agree? And you keep upgrading it even though they keep getting it cracked.
That's boundaries.
Yep. So you're too embarrassed to say no to your friends when they suggest a bougie Mexico Tulum trip, even though your savings account is like, help me.
Yeah, it's both. And so we'll talk more specifically about money, but I think, please recognize that you could have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, but if that's not how you've allocated your money,
right?
If that's not how you've decided to utilize your money, then it becomes a boundary issue. And our comfort with saying no and what is our discomfort with saying no? Is it that what is the people pleasing about? What's the root?
Right.
Is it that we're trying to manage how people view us? Or is it that we're not comfortable with displeasing people? And if we're not comfortable with other people's emotions, that's problematic because it's not my job to prevent you from feeling how you feel.
Right.
You get to have your feelings. And so who am I to intervene from you feeling how you want to feel or need to feel in your body?
Yeah, that's really good. How about you buy your 10-year-old every toy that they ask from Amazon because you feel guilty for being a working mom?
Oh, so sweet. And I have a 10-year-old and she has access to my Amazon account and I let her put everything on the wish list.
Oh,
but
so even you would say it's a budget?
Absolutely not. It's boundaries.
It's all about boundaries.
I got that wrong.
Everything's boundaries.
The answer is boundaries, people. It's all about boundaries. And again, we'll talk about guilt, but what is the thing that's missing? So I feel guilty. I feel bad because I'm not spending time with my child. So how I'm trying to overcompensate is by giving her, because she's 10, I have a 10-year-old. Am I overcompensating for toys? No, let's address the actual issue. Let's figure out how we spend quality time together. So my kid and I are watching Goonies and E.T., even though she doesn't want to, but I really want her to watch those movies.
Oh my
so we're watching the Goonies. We watched E.T. It took us 2 days to watch E.T., but we watched E.T. yesterday. Yes.
E.T. used to scare me, by the way.
It scared me too.
Terrified.
Really? I think I'm old enough. I'm a little bit older than you guys. So I went to the theater to see E.T. and my poor mother had to take me out of the theater because it's too dark in the beginning. And even at going on 50, I'm still like, this movie's creepy. But my kid actually laughed at it.
I love the Goonies. It's one of my favorites.
Me too.
My daughter didn't make it through.
Really?
But no, it's not about the toys. It's if we're feeling guilty, we need to look at what is it about us? What is it that we want our child to have, and then address it, or whomever it is, right? But that's not the issue. The issue isn't purchasing more things. In that scenario, it's about the quality time, and there's not enough toys on Amazon to market to buy quality time with your kid.
That's true. So how about regarding like household finances? So your partner spends freely, but you don't bring it up because you hate confrontation, even if it means cleaning up the mess later.
Ooh, I know someone like this. It's both. So there's a budget issue, but there's a boundaries issue. And again, why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we talking about how our needs get met? So maybe your partner wants to spend freely. So how do we set a budget for that? Like you get X amount of dollars and you can go bananas and do whatever you want with this.
Yeah.
And so that's what boundaries are about. Boundaries are about the space in which I can love me and love you at the same time.
I love that.
But it's not okay for me to just love me and not think about your needs. It's also not okay for me to just love you and not think about my needs.
Right.
So where's that balance? Where's that space where we can hold both? But we need to have a conversation about it.
I think that's honestly so perfect, because I've heard people say before, and now, with me in the dating circuit, where guys would say, oh, they hated how their partners before would like spend all this money at like fancy Pilates studios or all these different gyms. But I'm like, well, you're going to spend money at the golf, course.
Yeah.
And that costs a lot of money, because I think they don't understand justifying that. They might go to like, Planet Fitness and it's a lot cheaper, and they don't understand the why. But I'm like,
I much preferred when Jeff and I didn't have a joint bank account. Like for the first, maybe 6 months of our marriage, we'd both been single and working. So we just had our own accounts, and then we combined accounts, and suddenly it was like, well, you're spending this here and that here. And so recently I got tired of it. I'm like, I quit commenting. And so I just been using my separate credit card. And it's the same amount of money that I'm spending, but he can see the payments just going to Amex, and he doesn't say anything.
Fascinating.
It's if he sees what I'm...
Yeah, because then he can evaluate line by line.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, you spent this at the med spa, or this
did you really need
Farm
this
Rio? And I'm like, leave me alone. That's how I choose to spend it.
I think the other thing is, at a certain age, his, hers, and ours makes sense. So we're not 20. Like you and Jeff didn't... I know for a fact that you and Jeff did not get together when you were 20 and building together.
Right.
So then we come into this place as equals. But I think particularly for those of us who are dating or in new relationships over 40, when we already have assets, to have a conversation about what's ours and what's mine, what's ours and what's yours. I love you enough to protect you, to look out for your interests. So make sure you have your little pot over here for X, Y, Z. I think the other thing that comes up, I think particularly for Jeanette, in this current scenario, is like what's going to these kids, what's going to those kids, and what's parity.
That's always hard.
When you're
healthy.
in a joined, joined household. What about, for those of us who own businesses, right? So you undercharge your clients.
Stop
and
it.
Don't raise your rates because you're afraid of seemingly like feeling like you're greedy, you're going to lose them.
So that's something that comes up for a lot of therapists. There are a lot of therapists who are on insurance panels, and so we're under contracts. We're capped at a certain amount. But let's recognize that I'll use therapy as an example. There's a cost associated with it. There's time, there's my education, there's training.
Right.
And also there's a cost. So somebody has to pay for it. So it's either we're saying, well, the insurance company is going to pay for a portion, my client's going to pay for a portion. But I think as a professional, what portion am I willing to pay? If I am supplementing my client's therapy, what kind of sessions do you think we're doing? Because the other thing is, I have clients who are coming in who are buying a Birkin bag, or I have a client who bought a $7,000 Cartier bag. I don't have a $7,000 Cartier bag. My kid's not in private school. So what kind of work am I doing when I'm looking at you and I'm resenting you because you have, I've given you the bargain basement price for therapy, but you're willing to spend your money elsewhere.
It's because they don't put the same value on it.
And try being a divorce attorney. They don't want to spend money on a divorce lawyer.
Of course not. They don't want the divorce, and they definitely don't want you to get your cut. Right.
No. Yeah. Wow. What about co-signing on a family member's car loan, even though your credit loan or your credit score is still recovering
Boundary.
from last time?
It's definitely a boundary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that ability to say no and being okay with saying no. And why is it that we feel like we have to say yes to this person?
This is the biggest thing I had to work in therapy over was boundaries. Like, so I'm twice divorced. It's after my second divorce. I was like, all right, I need to figure out why I keep making these bad decisions. And it was boundaries. Yeah. Not financial, but just always saying yes.
And what is that thing? I think, Jeanette, I think that's the place where I can probably relate to you. I think in being only children, we're looking for connection, and we have someone else telling us what love looks like, what a healthy, loving relationship looks like, and what kind of partner we should be, and what kind of support we should be giving. I think that often happens with women, not just only children.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to balance this, like, well, I want to love you. I want to be a good partner. I want to be a supportive partner, and really making sure that we define what does that look like. And again, that boundary being, yes, I want this marriage to work, and I want to belong, and I've really worked really hard to build something. I don't want to see that go. But at the same time, like, how hard is that person working? How much are they looking out for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another part of it for me was religious. Like, I grew up just, you give and you turn the other cheek and you walk the extra mile, and never really learned, but you got to have the boundaries and take care of yourself.
Did you grow up Catholic?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Sometimes the guilt and shame that comes with Catholicism, I can hear it coming. It comes in the door before my clients come in. And
my husband's Catholic, and I do see
my ex-husband is.
Yeah. And it's the self-sacrificing, and that you're supposed to give, and you're supposed to bleed, and you're supposed to toil.
Yes.
And that gets into the financial stuff, like, what are these concepts that we're working with? And can we challenge them? Are they true? Are they real? Or is this just something that someone else told us to do in order for us to stay in line?
Right. And I think that brings us into our next topic now. So if we move into money wounds, so, what are they, and, how are you seeing them showing up in these high achieving, women and parents that you see?
I think the first point is that there's the fear of failure. And so even if you've come from a place where you didn't have a lot of means, I think sometimes we come into parenting or into marriages afraid of failing. And so we're going to do anything that has to be done to keep this ship afloat. The second piece is how we define success, and whether or not we are overachieving and we're so accomplished because we're treating some type of trauma. So is your successfulness a trauma response? Right. Are we, through our success, proving our worthiness to other people? Do we have self-worth, or do we see worth or value beyond what we're able to accomplish, beyond a dollar, beyond an amount? I have lots of clients and friends who I would consider to be successful, but you would never know that because they function from this pauper's mentality. Really? Absolutely.
Wow. And can they go back and pinpoint like certain moments in their life when they started feeling those ways, or?
Yeah. For my clients, yes, I'm going to push them. For friends, not so much. So I have a couple of friends who have spouses where I'm kind of talking to the spouse through the friend, but where they don't see it. They don't see it, because their eyes on the prize. They're trying to get a certain amount of money in their retirement, and then they'll relax, and then they'll begin to enjoy life.
Right.
But at that point, we're starting to get, a lot of my friends are in their 50s. We're starting to get the health diagnoses. Life is starting to catch up with us. We can't wait till we have a certain money in our bank account to start living. Yeah. Like life is lifing.
Like, what are we teaching our kids?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I started having to do that. Just take a look at myself recently. When my daughter wrote me a little note and a birthday card saying, "Mommy, you work so hard. I love you so much, but it's okay to take a break."
Wow.
And I was like,
out of the mouths of babes.
Oh my God. Yeah. That, I felt, and I'm trying to take more opportunity to pause and spend some of the earnings that I'm earning along the way and go and take the time and go on trips with her, because it's it goes by so fast.
And it's life, that you're currently living.
Yeah.
And to have this young person look at you and say, hey, enjoy the fruits now.
Right.
You know, don't squirrel all the fruit away because it's not going to be any good anyway, right? If you're squirreling fruit away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you talked a little bit about people who grew up without money. Do you ever see an adult having issues because they grew up with money and their adulthood doesn't match the level of wealth they're used to?
Yeah, so I think, and that's what I was saying about just the way that we define success. And is success just defined based on money, or is it just defined based on accoutrement? You know, and where do we get these notions from that we're supposed to have a house this size or a car this size?
Right.
It's cultural. You know,
It
there's a
is.
cultural piece that says, hey, you have to check off these boxes. And I have so many clients who are like, I've done everything right. My parents put me in the right high schools. I went to the right colleges. I got the right internship. Sometimes it's I married the right person and bought a house in the right neighborhood. And they come into me and they're like, so why am I not happy?
Yeah.
Right.
I have everything. I did everything I was supposed to do. When's the joy coming in?
Right. And they're still feeling empty.
Yeah, but it's the external gratification, right? It's this external locus of control as opposed to the internal locus of control. It's performative that we are trying to keep up with the Joneses when we actually are the Joneses. The three of us, we are the Joneses.
Yep.
So what is it that we're racing towards? Often I say, you know, is it the end? You know, like what's the end? To
Right.
me, the end is death. So
And
is
what
that,
does the end? Yeah, exactly.
is that what we're racing towards?
Yeah.
Is that is that the goal? Is that what we're
Right.
trying to achieve?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I thank you, Gabby. Gabby's a great little being. I
She
like
is.
her.
She
You know,
is.
but thank you to her for seeing you and for giving you that permission. Like I see what you're doing here and it's already done. It's achieved. You don't have anything else to prove. And that's often
right.
what I'm telling my clients is you've done it. you
Yeah.
know? Now what? Now let's enjoy some of this. Now let's have some fun. You know, the boxes are checked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another iPhone isn't going to make you happy.
No. Thankfully, she is the first one to tell me, you know, when I'm like, oh, do you want a new phone? She's like, no, mommy, like the next version, there's nothing better about it. It's like just a slightly improved, better camera. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I always just check in with her because like, you know, I had two sisters growing up, or I have two sisters growing up rather, but she's the only child. And I'm trying to like have that balance of not giving everything because I only have one. And I'm divorced and I work so much, you know, so there is that guilt there.
Yeah. Guilt came up a couple of times as we were prepping for the show, and I knew where it came from. And so I'm going to probably say this repeatedly throughout this conversation, but let's make sure that we know where the guilt is coming from.
Right.
And sometimes it is a dream deferred of our own that even for myself, so I'm divorced as well. I got married at 35. I had a kid at 38. It was 8 days shy. Yeah, she was supposed to be born on my birthday, which is a whole other controversial issue. But I had this kid 8 days shy of my 39th birthday.
Wow. So you felt like, oh, I got married later in life, so I should be on this right track.
Baby,
almost?
I planned this. Like, I wasn't going to have a kid out of wedlock. I was raised by a single parent. My mother was very clear about how hard this was. And so it was never sexy or appealing to me.
Right.
So I mean, I dated with voracious intensity in my 20s. That's a topic for a different show. But I mean, I was on a mission. So I finally get married at 35, and then I'm divorced by 42. And one of the first things I said when I looked at this kid was, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I planned. But my kid had the best Christmas that year. One of my girlfriends and I mean, we were overcompensating. She had she had the Barbie dream house.
Right.
She had every doll. This kid has a January birthday. I had to pull back some of the
my
toys.
God.
Like,
Yes.
no, Christmas is ridiculous this year, right? But what I was making up for is my own sadness. The fact that I didn't plan for this kid. Like, as soon as I got divorced, I was like, oh my God, I'm making this kid a statistic. Like, statistically, the odds
same
start
way.
to be against her.
And that's why so many people stay in a marriage
Yes.
too long, is because
Yes.
you're just so scared of screwing up your kid.
Yeah, let me go ahead and say to those people who are listening, who are staying for the kids, that's all you're modeling is a miserable marriage for your kids. You're demonstrating to your kids that mommy and daddy aren't happy,
This
and
is
you don't
good
get
as
to
it
be
gets.
happy either. Right? Yeah, that's the message that they get. So it's with the guilt. and I have to recognize that other people have to recognize that, no, this life isn't going as planned.
Right.
And that's a conversation we can have with our kids. Like, you know what? This is not how I planned this. But buying them everything isn't going to put mommy and daddy back together. It's not going to heal the wound. Whatever this loss is that we're actually projecting on them, because these kids are okay. They're great.
Right.
Yeah. These kids are doing great.
Resilient.
They're so resilient.
What about kids who are in a social circle where the parents really do overdo it, and that's the norm they see? Because that's what we hear a lot. Is, well, all these people have this and that, and it's true.
Yeah, it is true. But I think it's twofold. So one, it's the old adage about if everybody jumps off a cliff, are you going to jump off too? But that doesn't solve a whole lot. But it goes into more of the conversation about values and what is it that, I see that everybody else has you guys were talking about some kid who wanted a G-Wagon, which I thought was hilarious. It's like, does your mom have a G-Wagon?
Yeah.
What makes you think you have a G-Wagon?
Yeah.
But let's do a real quick reality test.
Right.
I promise you the car payment on a G-Wagon has to be to $800 to $900 a month.
I have no even idea what it is.
Yeah, easily. So this is a kid who's not rooted in reality. About the car payment, about car insurance. Even Jeanette, as you guys are talking about cars, and do we get 3 cars? Like, do we need a car for the kids? Like, do these kids even know? Not just because they're thinking gasoline, but like maintenance on a vehicle. How much do tires cost? If you guys are going to curb this car, somebody's going to lose a whole rim on a car. Like, so talking about those kind of iterative pieces. And so, you might have friends who get a G-Wagon for some strange reason. I don't know why a 16-year-old would need a G-Wagon, but okay, that's cool. But what else? What would we have to give up for you to have a G-Wagon? Baby, we'd have to downsize this whole house for me to have a third car payment for a teenager.
You might just live in the car.
Yeah. Hey, are you willing to live in the car?
Into the car together.
That sounds like a blast, But I think it's having those reality conversations, particularly with teenagers, and bringing them into the conversation. And and not waiting until they're 14, 15, 16 to start talking about money and start talking about what is it that we value and what's important. Why do you need a car at all? Or do you, maybe it is for the purpose of driving back and forth to practices or whatever.
Right.
Maybe that takes some of the burden off of the family, but does that burden outweigh the actual expense? But there's a cost one way or the other.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's either going to cost me time to drive you, you're in baseball or whatever, and I have to drive all parts of metropolitan Atlanta.
Right.
Like, so do I need that time back? Because I could be making money while you're...
With their clients,
Right. Or you could be driving a sibling or whatever. So what is the collective need of the family? And how is that kind of filling in the gap? But there is a compromise. We're going to have to give something up for you guys to have a car. Then there's a trade-off. It could be time, it could be money.
Yeah, and I figured, as we're in the thick of summer right now, and parents and kids are spending more time together, I feel like this is like a good time to have those conversations. So what would that look like? And what are some examples of things that we could do to have those conversations with the kids to teach them? Because I feel like there's teachable moments around us all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of it's developmentally appropriate, right? So you want to have developmentally appropriate, age-appropriate conversations with kids. If you have a kid who's, 7 or 8 and we're talking about toys, like there's some of it could be a trade-off. Like, well, I'm willing to get that for you, but what are you willing to give up? So you have lots of toys in your room. What are you done with? Should we be donating some of your toys to other kids so that you can get something new? So that, one in, one out. There's been this conversation about Lululemons, right? Like, so why does a 14 or 16-year-old girl need a pair of Lululemons?
Right.
I want it justified.
Yeah.
Maybe your old pants are worn out and you do need new pants and a good quality. I got it. Maybe something has changed in your body and you need new clothes.
Well, it could be the new alone, but I guess to your point, would you recommend even asking why they want that specific brand, or even going there?
Sure,
to have that conversation about it?
At that rate, I have an attorney present. At that case, I want to hear the whole case. I want the justification. So let me give you like a nebulous example with my kid. She goes to this tutoring. It's mathnasium. She goes to mathnasium. She hates it. So now I found that I had to bribe this kid in order to go. I'm bribing her with snacks because she's hungry. But my kid, but this is what I've done inappropriately. I was bringing her a beverage, some chocolate, maybe a gummy bear, and some chips, right? So then you set this bar where you have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So I pick up my kid last week, and I have snacks, right? I have a couple of things for her. And she's like, oh, Mommy, I need a chocolate. I'm like, you don't need chocolate. Yes, I have to have chocolate. Or I need a gummy with it. So watch my kid. My kid's like, well, I have the beverage, in which she has a $40 Stanley, but I bought her a soda. So she has the beverage, but she likes spicy chips. So here's her argument. I need a beverage. I need something crunchy, but I like spicy and crunchy. But because I've had something spicy and crunchy, I need a chocolate for sweet, and I need something gummy. So my kids comes up with
all the textures.
Yes. But that's her argument. But this is the monster I've created, right? Because now you can convince me because you've come up with this like legitimate process. But just kind of going back to talking to kids and teaching them. Another example from my kid.
Well, did she get what she wanted?
No. Okay. But it was a great argument. It's very persuasive.
So with the Lululemon, my stepdaughter would say, I want that because it's what everybody else has. She says that because I've said, oh, there's dupes on Amazon.
There's dupes at Costco. Lululemon's currently suing Costco.
There's a brand on Amazon.
Because they all use the same manufacturer.
Yes,
of course.
they do. There's a brand on Amazon called Hey Nuts, and they look just like Lululemon. And my stepdaughter has seen them, and she's like, I was wearing a camo one that looked just like her Lululemon. She's like, oh, you got a pair of Lululemon?
Sure didn't.
No, they're $15 from Amazon.
Yeah. She's seen stuff that I've been wearing too, and she's like, oh my God, is that? I'm like, honey, no. Amazon.
But even that's some of the value, right? So it's the in-group versus out-group. So she wants to be in the in-group.
Yeah.
Are people making fun of her because she's not in the in-group? These are things that I'd have a conversation with her about. Also, is there some reason why we're walking billboards? So we do free advertising for companies that aren't as loyal to us. So we are so committed to something.
It's actually a really great point.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I think it comes up in dating too. You know, I think these are transferable skills. When we're like, hey, this person wants you to do something or wants you to kind of carry their load, and I see how they benefit from it, but I'm not really clear on how you benefit from it. Again, I need to be convinced. You could convince me to go to Lululemon, but it's not going to be because everybody else is a walking billboard. Because I don't value your being a walking billboard. Yeah. What I do value is that your body has changed and you're not comfortable in the old clothes, and that there is a level of quality to the material, and you like the high waist. I need high-waisted pants because I don't want to feel self-conscious when I bend over. Now you got my attention.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think even with my own child, I'm like, I'm going to teach you how to persuade me, but you're going to have to learn these skills to sell me on this notion. You know?
Yeah.
In terms of those values too, though, like I really started teaching my kid early the value of giving tips, and that was something that someone else taught me when I was a kid. Like if you can't afford to tip, then you can't afford to eat. So funny thing happens with my 10-year-old. Yeah, she was 10 by this time. I'm just thinking she may have been 9. I hand my kid my debit card, and I have her. She wants Starbucks. She wants something from Starbucks. It's a cake pop. She walks over to Starbucks, and this is me intentionally giving her the space to walk what's probably an urban block where she has to cross a small street, but she's safe. She's safe.
Right.
But I'm also trying to give this child some space to develop some skills, right?
Yes.
Even when she was really little, she would want fast food, and I don't eat fast food for lots of reasons, just because I don't like it. I have discerning taste buds. I don't know. But I'm taking my kid to get fast food, but I would always make her order and speak up.
Yeah.
And there were times where she's like, I don't want to ask for it. And I'm like, oh, we can leave, sis. That's why I wanted to make it clear that I'm not there for me. I'm purely here for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you can't ask for what you want, then we can leave. So now we're up to this place where I'm sending her into the store by herself because I know that we went into stores by ourselves. So why aren't these kids getting these skills? It's an important skill to have, right? So I'll make this brief. Send my kid into Starbucks with my debit card, and it's infinite possibilities, limited possibilities from my perspective, but infinite possibilities for my 10-year-old. Yeah. She comes back and she's handing me the receipt, but like we're already in mid explanation, right? And so the cake pop costs $3.25. So I have a problem with, I know how much it costs, but I already have a problem with a small dollop of cake, a small dollop, small ice cream scoop of cake on a stick, for $3.25. But the total charge on my card is $8.75. You know why? Because my kid gave a $5 tip. She sure did. And I'm like, baby
She's
girl.
But Mom, you taught me.
Yeah, baby girl, we need to talk about percentages. So typically it's about 20%. My math skills aren't the greatest, but I think that's about 150% in a tip that you gave. And I thought, but then I also said, yes, you learned the importance of tipping. Mm-hmm. And I love you so much because you are so generous in spirit with my money. Right. But generous nonetheless, But those are the opportunities that we have, those teachable moments to teach them tax. Oh, I have $5 and I want a toy. Well, there's 8.25% tax. Do the math on that and tell me how much you need in order to purchase the toy. Those are the small conversations we're having when they're in elementary school. I think for you guys with teenagers, it's bringing them into the conversations. Right. So one, children see the fruits of our labor, right? They get the club, they get the Lululemon. We're doing a Lululemon ad, people. Right. Where they get the shoes, they get the vacations, they receive the things, but we're not necessarily bringing them into the thought process. Yeah. Like, how are we prioritizing money? What are we prioritizing? When I book this trip, what was I choosing between? So it's bringing them into those conversations. I think with your teenagers to join you in those conversations. Tiffany being home with a 14-year-old girl, it is a more, the literature shows it's more of a democratic process, right? When it's just you and a kid or you and one person, you turn to them and say, what are we having for dinner? What do you want for dinner? In Jeanette's household, it's probably a little bit less democratic, right? There are decisions that are made for people and they just have to kind of get in line. Yeah. But it's bringing them to the table to say, hey, this summer there are 7.5 weeks of a break. These are all of our needs. There are 5 individuals here who have individual needs and collective needs. Let's make a collective decision about what are our priorities and what are the things that we value. What are the things that we want to make sure that we get done for sure? And what are some things that are some nice to haves or nice to dos? And getting the kids to kind of weigh in. It doesn't mean that they win. It doesn't mean that they get their way, but that they're a part of the conversation. Yeah. They're a part of the conversation, and we're modeling the process because ultimately, what are we trying to do with these children? Right. Yeah. We're trying to launch them. We're trying to make them individual, self-actualized adults. And so we have to allow them to practice some of those things. When they're little, when you're traveling with them, to have them lead you through the airport. Take us to the gate. Get us to the gate. How do we get there? With Hartsfield-Jackson International, it's an adventure, to have to ask a 7 or 8 year old to lead the way. But it's allowing them to lead while we're standing there, while we're able to guide them and give them feedback, so that one day when we're not here, I had a child just shy of turning 40, right? I've told my kid, my goal is to do everything I can in terms of exercise, nutrition, taking care of myself so that I can be here for you, but I can't guarantee you that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so my number one job is to make sure that whether I'm here or whether I'm not here, that you're okay. And so I'm going to teach you how to do that as we go.
I love that. Now I was going to ask you a question. So because I have, just my one child, Gabby, right? And her dad and I, we have different, I wouldn't say maybe different values of money, but we handle things a little bit differently.
Great. Right? I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. But I think so what I often see is that, he immediately will shut down certain purchases of hers. And she ends up thinking about things cost too much money, and then it's applied almost to everything, right? To the point where she was once asking me well, what do I do about taxes? And how do I handle this? And how do I handle that? And I don't want her to have a fear or panic, because I grew up feeling as though I was a financial burden to my parents. And I never want her to feel that way. So I'm trying to balance it, and then also not make sure I'm not over giving to her as well. Yeah. And I don't want her to have that stress, understanding how things work. And I try to explain to her, to give her a grasp on it, because she's already thinking okay, how much money am I going to make after college and choosing careers that, can afford her a decent lifestyle and going through those exercises in school that honestly I never went through in high school, but now they go through it a little bit more. So yeah, where is the balance in that? What kind of conversations can I have with her?
Yeah, some of it's a brainstorm. So I like Gabby. I've never met her, but she sounds so pragmatic. One, that it's okay that her dad has a different perspective, because that just gives us some material to work with, something to talk about. Right. And that we're not preparing her to be little you or little him.
Right.
We're preparing her to be
independent.
Yeah, and to have her own agency, right? So to have a conversation about what are your dad's values and what is he willing to do? Now, what are mom's values and what is she willing to do?
Right.
And what are Gabby's values?
Because I also don't want her to feel as though he shuts things down and because he can't afford it or doesn't want to do it for her, or she feels as though because they'll be like, oh, we'll ask your mom.
Yeah,
she'll do that.
And
that she's not good enough for him,
Yeah, but even to reframe it, and so we all have different relationships with money, and so money might represent something for him, and to have that conversation with her about what money represents for him and what it is that he's willing to do. Sometimes maybe he is being punitive. Maybe he's just like, well, I've given you some X and that's my limit.
Right.
To have a conversation about that. But I think also that it's not your job to fill in for the gaps in terms of making it up for her. That's her dad. She gets to have a relationship with him that's separate from you, that you don't have to mediate that for her. But it also gives her the space to say, in partnership, is this somebody who would I want to be with a partner like this? Or would that be challenging for me? Or, and so now we're doing these mental exercises. Yeah. Even as we're talking about her future, we don't know what the future holds. Often when parents get all this angst about, making sure their kids are going to be successful in terms of their careers, I want you guys to think about how much the world has changed since we were children.
Oh, yeah.
Our parents would not have been able to fathom some of the things that people do. My 91-year-old grandmother, every time she has a little touch of dementia, but every time she sees me, she's like, "You work from home?" And it's not in a bed.
That's funny. I've never thought about that.
And they pay you for that,
right?
Because she could not, as a working woman, could not fathom the notion of not having to be face to face with people and touching things and laboring and toiling. It's the same thing for us, that our kids are going to have some opportunities in the future that are beyond our imagination. So we can do the mental exercise, but for her to recognize that the world will change.
Right.
But we get based on what we know, okay, that you need a certain level of education or training. But I think the thing that's most important is, what do you enjoy? What's your heart's desire? What do you think, how do you want to spend your time? How do you think you might want to spend your days? But also leave space and opening and that might change, and that's okay too.
Right.
If you decide to go live in a yurt, then great.
Well, I was going to ask you, Jeanette, do you deal with this ever, with having kids that are going back and forth between homes where, she wants certain hair products or different things, and then do you find as though
for sure.
you're buying double sets? Because I'm like, I'll send the link to her dad and be like, can you order this, this, and this? And he may or may not, but I can't make them. And then, so she's lugging certain products back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just going to order you a second set and send it directly to his house. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious there, what are you trying to avoid? Her hauling the stuff? Or are you feeling some kind of way that it's not fair, that he won't get her the things that she enjoys when she's such a good kid? She's such a good kid, she deserves to use this $30 hair conditioner.
Right. Yeah, for me, I think it is I look back to when we did get divorced, and she was lugging the suitcase after school, with the stuff. And then we just decided, okay, she wasn't cool with that anymore. So I didn't want her to have to feel as though when she's going between both homes, she packs up all her stuff. And then she used to have
like a little turtle, putting it all in her little tortoise shell. Yeah.
So I was feeling bad about that. And then just wanting to make sure that to make her life easier so that she didn't have to lug it all back and forth.
And that's
the basics.
But that's one of the guilt things. It's I want my kid's life to be easier than mine. And I think just making sure that we understand what our motivation is. Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this because I'm trying to heal my inner child? Or am I doing this because it means something to my kid in the future?
So would you recommend then I just talk to her about it and say like, hey, does it even bother? Because it never even occurred to me.
Yeah, ask her how much it matters. And she might be like, I need my $30.
So
yeah. Well, like my kid doesn't want to haul the bag.
Yeah.
She really doesn't. And we have a divorce attorney in our presence. Like most parenting plans say that the kid shouldn't be hauling clothes back and forth, or the basic things like
have your own stuff.
Yeah, you need to have clothes at mommy's house. You need to have clothes at daddy's house. But I do think that even again, we have a divorce attorney. There's always the special thing, right? Like they're special when they're little. They're special little stuffy. The stuffy, my daughter's was unicorny. Unicorny has to travel, so we have to figure out how does unicorny travel back and forth. If it's so important to your kid, not to you, but to your kid, that she has her conditioner, then we buy a second one.
Right.
Because guess what? However often your kid washes her hair, whether she's at your house or at his house, she's going to use the same amount of product.
Right.
So let's just make sure she has the product that she likes. Yeah. Because she's also a good kid.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And that's kind of what I've been defaulting to. I'm like, I didn't want her to feel as though she needed to ask.
Yeah.
Or put her in that position to ask.
But why not? Ask her father?
Yeah.
Her father.
But see, my stepdaughter has come to me and been like,
yes.
And been like, I want this drunk elephant, bronzing drops.
That's another thing.
And I want all the super goop and, all the Sephora stuff. And I'm just like, no.
Yeah. But
No.
Why the no?
It's expensive. Like, I just feel like, I don't even always spend that much money on my own stuff. Like, I learn about the dupes, and like, I don't have the Dior lip oil. I buy NYX because I think it's the same damn thing in a different tube and, a third of the price. So I point that out to her and say, hey, I'm happy to buy you the, L'Oreal dupe. It's the same thing. Let me know if you want me to get that for you. And then
I can get you a great moisturizer because you need a moisturizer, and I get that.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to buy that brand just because of the label. It's the same stuff. So let's do a little bit of chemistry. I will walk into Sephora or Ulta or wherever with you, or even CVS, and let's compare ingredients.
Yes.
And if there's something so super, and let's even look at ingredients. It's called being like, you could do this with food too. So I used to have the chef that I worked with. She would do this whole demo on called Food Sleuth, and we're turning over and we're reading labels. So for these kids to recognize that, like, the highest in those first ingredients, that's because
that's what matters.
That's what's in it the most. And then red dye number 6 at the bottom is the least amount. And let's have a conversation about. But with that kid, I keep coming back to the why. If it is the same thing, then why do we need to have the thing in the pretty packaging?
And it truly is the pretty packaging.
Well, let's go get some pretty packaging.
And it's trendy.
Yeah.
It's trendy.
Repackage it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think also just recognizing what piece is yours.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't buy myself that kind of stuff. I don't treat myself in those kind of ways. It lends to this language of, well, I don't do that for me. And I'm not saying you're saying this, but I think in talking to the audience, I don't do that for myself. So why am I doing that for you? I don't want you to be spoiled. I don't want you to think that things come easily. I work really hard for these things. And so is it me? Is it my wound? Is it something going on with me? Or what's going on with this kid that they feel like these things are so important? So why are the labels so important to you?
And something I worry about a lot is raising our kids so privileged that they're not going to be happy adults because they're not likely to make what my husband and I make. Do they need to? No. Like, I believe that they need to do what they enjoy. And if what they enjoy doesn't, pay what we have, like, I want them to be happy like that. So I don't want them to feel like they have to have these certain labels or certain things and then get into adulthood and not be able to afford it themselves.
Why?
Because then I feel like they'll be dissatisfied. They'll be unhappy because they have this idea of this is what life is supposed to look like, and I can't afford that.
Okay. What's wrong with them being dissatisfied or unhappy at some point?
Yeah, I guess at some point,
Yeah.
I guess it's like if they figure it out eventually, it's okay.
But I also, I was just kind of being angel's advocate there, because I also like the notion of them being a little bit dissatisfied and disappointed now.
Yeah.
She gets to hear the no now.
Yeah.
You're telling her no now to save her the no later. You're
to be like conditioned to hear it.
Yeah,
maybe.
but also I think what Jeanette's talking about are her values. Like Jeanette says, I don't value the label. I do value the product. I need a nice, creamy, rich moisturizer, right? I'm with you on that, sis. But I can help you find that without the price point.
Yeah.
I think the other thing with that particular kid is even having a conversation about, okay, well, what's the trade-off? What are you willing to give up? Oh, you like Lululemons and what is the brand?
Drunk
the elephant stuff. Yeah, Drunk Elephant. So I have a 10-year-old, so I'm just now getting the stuff, but I'm getting
have fun.
The Sol de Janeiro. I'm like, that stuff.
There's so much of that crap in our house.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Smells so good.
And I don't know if you guys are how you guys are like budgeting for the kids, or if there's a budget for the kids.
What do you mean
See?
budget?
That's what I mean.
don't.
So perhaps each kid gets $30 in your
that's a good
household.
point.
It gets, and then you can decide what you want to do with your $30.
Yeah.
But this one's a Dollar Tree and is racking up, or is at least at $5 below, and you can barely afford your Sol de Janeiro with $30.
That's what we need to do.
Choose.
Yeah.
But
We need
choose.
to just give each kid, hey, here's, for school shopping, here's what you get. And you want to buy 10 pairs of pants or one pair of pants?
That's kind of what
it
I do with Gabby. We have like a Go Henry card,
Yeah.
and we set the chores on there. And like my former coworker said that it was like ridiculous that I was like going to give her 50 cents to walk the dog. They
Interesting.
were like, that's so cheap. But I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
It was 50 cents for a dog walk. But so she has her tasks, and she has to also check them off herself in order to get paid. And payroll comes every Saturday
I love
night.
it. Uh-huh.
And if you don't check off your tasks yourself, like you have to clock in at work, you don't get paid. And then I have a certain set that goes towards doubling her investment, so she earns interest on it too. And then I'll just see like the charges come through, and she's spending it at Depop or wherever, and I'm like, fine, because it's the money you have in there and you earned it.
Yeah.
Use it as you want.
Those are your discretionary funds, right?
Yeah.
I think another thought is that collective responsibility for teenagers. And I know, you have, especially you have kids that are doing all kinds of different things. So it's hard to even treat them all the same.
It's hard. Yeah.
But, whether or not they're responsible for a bill at some point, a utility bill, so that they understand that all of your money isn't actually discretionary, or if there's a percentage of Gabby's money that needs to be put away for savings, and how are we talking about what you value and what you want, and that kind of instant gratification, and what are the things that we are saving for or building towards is a separate conversation.
Yeah, I do let her know that, because every time she sees the money that's going into savings, because I match it at 100%. And I'm like, I explain that to her, like, you're never going to find that anywhere where somebody's matching it dollar for dollar. And I explain to her that it's going into this account to pay for your future car insurance that you want to drive, Yeah. So this is what it is. Because she's like, well, I would have so much more money in my account if. I'm like, well, you're really not going to notice it gone right now. But it's going to add up. And I show her every now and then. I'm like, this is what you have towards that.
There's a whole generation of kids that don't want to drive. So I'm really proud of the fact that all of your kids want to drive.
Oh my gosh,
for the
ours
longest,
are-
she said she didn't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now there's teen Uber, so it's like,
Right.
it does make it easier for parents. Something I thought was interesting on here was the hidden costs of overgiving. And one on here is undermining grit and appreciation.
So you have all my notes too.
Got
it.
I want kids with grit. And I think that's part of it, where I don't want to raise kids who, were coddled and just, had everything. I want them to have grit and be able to, build something for themselves and be proud of that.
Yeah, and some of it is their ability to fall and get back up, and our ability to stand back and watch them fail a little bit and watch them flail. That we'll never let them drown. You will never, ever, ever, ever drown. But you might get very tired. You might struggle in the water a little bit, and that's how muscle is built. So that they are if they have a problem, that we're not just jumping and solving for them, that we're sitting back and saying, well, tell me how you're thinking about this. Tell me what you think your options are. And I'll be a sounding board for you, but I'm not going to jump in and give you the answer. Because they have to, you don't teach decision making when you send them off to UGA. At that point, I would argue that it's too late. That you're teaching your children decision making from the time that they're born, but you're giving them parameters, right? So I'm not looking at my toddler and saying, "What do you want to eat?" They're going to say donuts. I say, "Do you want carrots or peas?"
I did that too.
Yeah. But we're building off of that as they're getting older. So we start having conversations about, do you want old car? You want my first car when I was in college, I bought my first car by myself. This is in 1997. I bought a 1979 Toyota Corolla. Her name was Lola the Corolla.
I had a dog named Lola. I love it.
Do you want the old used car or do you want the new car? Well, there's a trade-off with that because with the old car, you're saying, well, that's going to be cheaper and, I'm not going to care when they curb it or they run into things, which I always feel like is inevitable. But then there are repair costs on an old car. So all too often, people are giving children secondhand cars that break down on them, and then your kid's on the side of the road. Well, we don't want that.
Yeah,
right.
But then there's a cost associated with the new car. So, bring the kids into that conversation. Like, what do you feel like you want to be responsible for? But you were asking about emotional regulation.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned this earlier, just about, are you parenting yourself for the past or are you parenting for the kid? Recognizing, so it's for us as parents to kind of check in, like, is this my stuff? Is this me?
Yeah.
Or is it what this kid really needs? Is it what I want them to have, or is it what they want, or is it something that they need? I think those are the first places. Is it requires a level of insight on our part that not everybody has. Like, not everybody's aware of their wounds. Not everybody's aware of their history. And so sometimes even just kind of checking in with ourselves about where do I get these notions from? I'm someone who never bought myself the good lotions and creams because I'm frugal. And so I had to start. I've never held back with my kid for the most part, but I had to start treating myself first and recognizing the little girl in me deserves her equivalent of Sol de Janeiro sometimes.
Right.
She deserves to be treated just like the little girl that's looking at me with big wide eyes deserves to be treated.
Yeah.
But even tying, and this becomes that success piece, right? But what with the grit, it's like, what are we tying achievement to? So what do you have to do, or are we measuring it based on, like, if you do these things, then you can have something? But that's what the rest of life looks like, right? There's a certain amount of work or effort or energy that we're going to have to put in to get something back out. So how are we modeling that in our homes with our children? Are we saying, hey, you're responsible for the dog or the dishes or whatever?
Right.
I keep looking at Jeanette because I'm thinking, because you have 3 kids and they're just doing different things. There's one kid that's just sitting in the house.
And everybody has ADHD. It's
and then she has a couple of dogs and
lovely.
Cats.
Yeah. So no, they don't have chores. And
was that a conscious decision that you guys made?
No.
Oh.
And there was a time where I would try to do, this is when they were younger, like a chart of, like a chore chart that we put in the kitchen. And it was both chores and behavior. And it was like, if you got to the end of the week and you had less than 3 red X's, you get, this amount. It never worked.
Yeah. And the chore charts with them now it's just not the same.
Now
they don't care about you or your chart.
No.
Right. I think one of the other pieces too, just with parents, is for us to kind of pause and think about, like, what does money mean for us? And, like, money represents something for us. So is money power? Is it freedom? Is it choice? Like, money's really just a tool.
Yeah.
But it's loaded for all of us. It has a meaning to us. And so what is the meaning that I have? And then having a conversation with our kids about how do they view money, Do you have a kid that just sees you pull out plastic and swipe it and think, oh, it's this infinite thing out there? Like, what does credit look like? And what does that mean?
You're right. I'll never forget when Gabby was first starting to play, like, Roblox, and her iPad was connected to my Apple card, which was connected to my credit card, or the Apple account rather. And I just would never check my bank account. And then one day I decided to check, and I saw like all these random charges, but they were all like 289, 370, and they just kind of like, for 2 months it was going on.
Yeah, she was having a good time.
She had no idea. Yeah, but she was young. She was probably like 6 or something like that. And I think it was about $1,500 total.
Hilarious. In Brookhaven on Roblox. I love it.
And I was like, oh my God. So I saw these and I panicked. I like called Chase immediately, and they were like, oh, first of all, I didn't know it was her. So I called them and I was like, I see all these charges. It must be fraud, blah, blah, blah. So like, okay. And then we, got a new card and everything like that. And I went into her room and I was like, oh my God, Gabby, I just got off the phone with Chase. And she has one of her friends is named Chase. And she was like, why are you talking to Chase? I was like, no, the bank. And I explained the whole scenario to her, and she just was like, wrong.
Aww.
And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, mommy. Like, I didn't know. She didn't understand that's how it worked. Like,
it was real money.
That it was real money, but that also, like, once you tap okay, I think once, then she figured like, oh, I wasn't coming to her saying anything. So she didn't really understand because I was like, I didn't check my account, and 2 months have passed by, and she was just like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
She felt so bad. I was like, oh my God, that was like equal of like my mortgage payment. It was pretty
like, it
crazy.
still hurts, right?
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's okay. Happens to a lot of parents, but
Yeah, it does.
yeah. So how do we look to then break those cycles, specifically with the people pleasing?
Yeah. It's our comfort with other people's emotions. And, I'd said that at the beginning of our conversation, that people will feel and they get to be disappointed in us or angry with us or frustrated with us. And that's okay. I think particularly as it relates to our children, then they get to learn to work through those emotions in a safe space. I remember my daughter, when she was really little, and she's like, Mommy, I'm just so frustrated with you. I'm like, okay. Or even just sad. Like, Mommy, I'm sad. And I'm not trying to fix that. Like, you get to be sad. That's a whole feeling. I always say that to her. That's a whole feeling, sis. The sad's a whole emotion. Or I'm bored. And sometimes I say, well, good. I'm glad you're bored, because I know that boredom is the root of creativity. Now you get to think about what it is that you want to do.
Right.
I can make some suggestions. There's a math workbook there, and there's another book there.
There's a whole room you can clean up over there.
No. Yeah. Oh, well, you know what you don't want. That's a great start to figuring out what you do want.
Oh.
But the thing that was really important for me in raising my daughter is making sure that she has a voice and that she's able to talk about, know for herself what she wants and doesn't want, and what are her boundaries. Because all too often I know so many people who don't know what those things are. Yeah. So I think, again, our first step as parents is to understand who we are. Like, what is it that I'm trying to do? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? If I'm saying yes to my child or to anyone else to avoid the backlash of their emotions, then we're in a negative spiral at that point, because we can never keep everyone happy, and it's not our job to make everyone happy. And so it can be very freeing. It can be very liberating to let that go, to allow people to be sad or disappointed, or to wait. It's okay. My kid figured out very early on that I'll change my mind. And so she harasses me. Like, I'll say no, and it's like, no, but she'll harass me. So I had to do two things. And so one...
She's like, she doesn't mean what she's saying, and I can get her to switch.
Yes. Because clearly she's right? Like, I mean, she has the evidence to back it up, right? Yeah. So one, recognizing that if we're not sure, like, I don't know whether it's yes or no, so I'm just telling you yes because... I guess, yes.
Right.
If we're not sure, that we don't have to answer in that moment, to take a step back, to say, I'm going to give this some thought, and we can talk about it, not later, because later's not actually on my calendar, or not on anybody's calendar, but to say to our partners or to friends or to our kid, I'm going to give this some thought. Give me a call at 6:00, or let's talk about it after dinner, or let's go for a walk and give me some time to marinate on that. Because really there's nothing urgent. I think I put in the notes too, it's called solid maybe. So I got to the point where I stopped telling my kid yes or no when I wasn't sure. And I'd say, maybe. And I'd say, well, give me an hour and I'll think about it. That kid walked away and she's like, Mommy, you know how much I love a solid maybe. Because she knew that usually, like if my no is a no, then I'm going to say no. Right. No, we're not doing that now. But if you have a good chance of getting a yes, the solid maybe is actually a leaning to yes. So my kid's like, ooh, Mommy, you know how much I love a solid maybe, you know. But again, recognizing that we don't have to answer in that moment, that it's okay to take a step back and for us to kind of check in with ourselves and decide, is this something that I want to do and why?
But I think giving them that definitive time to come back, because that's one of the areas I get stuck with my daughter, is like she's coming at me in the moment where I'm like focusing on work and she's like, but when can we go? It's like when I've already, even sometimes when I've already agreed on something as a yes, then it's like she needs it now. And I'm like, can you just give me a minute?
Yeah. So there's heritability with ADD or ADHD. And my daughter's father won't acknowledge that he has ADHD, but I can see it. And her brother, she has a brother who's 18 years older than her. He was diagnosed with ADHD and was on a medication when he was a kid. So I saw it coming, right? And I saw how these teachers in her small public school were making accommodations for her. But I finally got this kid tested. And at first, when I scheduled the appointment, the nurse was like, yeah, you know, you don't want her on a medication, blah, blah, blah. And then we come back for the results, and she knew that I had seen the report, you know? And she's like, did you see the report? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, what do you think? And I was like, my kid is exceptional. My kid is exceptionally inattentive. My kid is in the 99th percentile of inattention. And I knew this. Right. But that's also that hyperactive energy, right? They need satiety in the moment. They want to be satiated. So a lot of times with my kid, when she keeps coming back, I've already told her when I'm going to give her an answer. So then I start saying, what did I tell you? When did I say I was going to give you an answer? Oh, you said at 3:00. Is it 3:00? No. Okay. Then that's when you can come back. But she'll keep coming back. But wait, there's more. You know? But even holding that boundary, right? Yeah. Like you can trust me. You can rely on me. I'm going to give you that answer at 3:00. If it's not 3:00, or if it's not Tuesday, is today Tuesday? Today's not Tuesday. Oh, what a novel concept.
Not today.
Yeah. Come back then. But you can depend on me. You can rely on me to give you your answer then, but to not be pressured into saying yes either. You know? And what I had to start saying to my kid as recent as yesterday is, I resent you when you harass me. It makes me want to say no. So I wanted to do the thing. I wanted to give you the thing, but I can't reward your behavior. I won't reward the tantrum. And so now it's a solid no.
And that was your choice.
That was your choice. But you have choice. You have agency.
That's right.
And I literally give my kid the code book. Up, down, left, right. I give her the code book to me. If you want to beat me at this game, here are the answers. But you've got to use them. Yeah. You know?
And you mentioned a little bit before in our other conversations about systemic roots of financial fear. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I think historically and culturally, we, be it, women and not being able to take out lines of credit, or in the past, not being able to have their own checkbooks. Where do these notions come from? So sometimes we have partners that say, hey, you're not going to be able to do this without me. You can't do this on your own. Or in our own heads, we're saying, I can't sustain this lifestyle by myself. So I'm going to stay in this marriage, or I'm just going to continually say yes to be compliant and to be lovable, or
And Jeanette, you probably see a good bit of that.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will have female clients tell me, he tells me I cannot do this without him, that I'm going to fall flat on my face, that I'm not going to be able to support myself.
And so let's evidence test. Let's do real numbers and let's do the math and figure it out. Will your life look the same? No. Is that okay? Yes. Do we get to rebuild? Yes. But then that again, that's where we go back to that fear of failure, right? So it's not just that maybe you didn't have means growing up, but this notion that, that we've built these things. We're trying to create a life for ourselves and for our children. If we're not able to do that, that can feel like failure. And really, measuring success in different ways, and seeing our lives in different ways, and recognizing that maybe the house won't be as big, or maybe I won't be able to buy the new car when I said, or maybe I won't be able to put this kid in private school or do all the things that I want to do for this kid. But also, what are we able to do? What can we accomplish? And what's really most important? Mm-hmm. So if I have to choose one thing, do I buy the more expensive house in the neighborhood with the good school?
Right.
Or do I keep my mortgage super duper low so that I can pay for a private school? But there's a cost associated. There's a trade-off. And so what are we willing to give so that we can get the thing that's most important to us? The other piece is, even having conversations with our kids about our values. So when I'm shopping, am I bringing my kid into the conversation about what do we want, or what's kind of the trade-off? What do we want to eat this? Are we talking in the grocery store, or am I saying to her, hey, I could go to the big box store to purchase these things, but I'd much rather buy them from a small business, a Black-owned business, a woman-owned business, an Asian-owned business, or a minority business, because it's important to me that they be able to eat too. Right. I want to make sure that these companies who can't compete, who aren't running ads or commercials, that we're making sure that we're investing in these other families, or investing in people who are in our community. And that's not everything, right? Because sometimes I want to save. I'm going to go to the big box store because they've negotiated the deal to be able to sell you the thing for the low price. But there are certain things, whether it's skin products or candles, or even buying a lovely dress at a boutique. I need a great dress. Let's go to a boutique and see what they have, and really find something that's special. Yeah. That's really look at not being like everybody else, and see what you can find that's different, so that you're not the sixth girl to come in here with the same dress on.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. So before we wrap up this conversation, let's talk about a couple of ideas for the summertime, brainstorm some ideas. So what are some little tasks or tips that parents can do with their kids this summer to teach them about saving and spending?
I think it's all about conversation. So I think, as we were talking about values, is what's important to your kid? What do they value? And so, I'm going to keep going back to Jeanette, because she has 3 kids, and inevitably they're going to have
I just have a lot of shit going on.
But now we're dealing with 3 different personalities, right? And so to go to each one of them and say, hey, what's really important to you? What do you really like? What do you really enjoy? If you had $100, how would you spend it? And so the one is going to blow her whole wad in one place. The other one's going to have 10 different things.
They are so different. My other stepdaughter, she doesn't care about money. She wants to have fun with her friends, and But even that, if she wants to have fun with her friends, does she want to treat her friends? So if you had $100, what would you do with your friends? Would you have a little party? Would you go have ice cream? How would you want to spend that time?
Actually, I experienced this with Gabby's birthday, 15th birthday coming up, and she was like, I want to go on a trip. I'm like, okay, where? And she's like, I want to go to Hawaii. I was like, okay.
I love it.
Cool.
It's a 10-hour flight.
I'll make it happen. But I talked to another one of my friends who does a lot of travel, and she's like, well, did you ever ask her why? Yeah. What is it about it? Is it the beach? Is it the volcanoes?
Is it the culture?
What is it about it? Because you can find a lot of those same things closer. Yeah. So I did that exploration with her, and she's like, I don't know, the beach. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So I started explaining that to her. I'm like, did you know it's going to take a whole day to get there? And,
the time difference is hard if you don't have enough time to acclimate to.
Yeah. So we talked about those things. She's like, wow, no, I didn't know. So what are the other options? I started telling her. Right. Yeah, exactly. Bahamas, really. And then just while we were having that conversation, Jeanette messaged, and she was like, hey, can you fit it in to go with, can you and Gabby go with us to the Keys? So I presented both of them to her. We could do the Hawaii, try to do that, or something closer by ourselves, or we could go with them to Key West. And she chose them.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's is something wrong with Gabby? Why is she choosing?
I know, she's this crazy family going to the Keys with us instead of Hawaii.
But I was like, she loves that she gets to be with me and have, mom-daughter time. But then she feels like she's siblings with Jeanette's kids too, which I love. So she gets a good balance of both. And she feels like, she's like, no, that looks pretty cool. I showed her the pictures and everything. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's, it wasn't like your kid needed to be in Maui and eat Spam sandwiches,
Not at all.
That she just wanted to trip.
Yeah.
And that just sounded fabulous.
Yeah. And she didn't do the research on her own. So, but it never occurred to me just to simply ask and have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Why Hawaii?
Yeah. Like, well, I was just like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this for her. And I started looking up like, whoa. I mean, if I'm going to go, I at least want to go to like a nice place, but this is going to be really expensive.
Yeah, but it is like, what are we actually trying to achieve? And so you may have heard something else. When she said Hawaii, you had your own construct around what Hawaii means.
That's
Whereas your kid just wanted a beach, and we can do that anywhere. I actually took my kid to Disneyland, and then I always ask her, like, what was your favorite part? Her favorite part was the pool at the hotel. And I said, when I could have stayed in Atlanta for the pool at the hotel, but now I know.
Oh, I did that once with her when she was like in kindergarten, and they were doing a trip on a project on a monument, and she chose the Statue of Liberty, and then she was all of a sudden like, I'm going to go to New York City. I'm going to go to New York City. So we went, and I went with another mom friend and her son, and the best thing for them was like going in the subway. Yeah. Not the shows.
Now, I will say the New York subway is pretty darn interesting. I mean, it's different than like MARTA.
Yeah. But I was like, wait, what? Like, this was like the best thing for you? She's like, yeah, I would have much rather have gone to the beach. I was like, what?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Now we know, and knowing is half the battle.
Right.
Knowing is half the battle.
Right. Yeah. So thank you so much for spending time with us. So tell everybody where they can find you if they want to work with you or chat with you.
So I'm of course on IG at Dr._Tavari, TAVARI_therapy. And you can also find me at my website, ttbhealth.net. And I am accepting new clients.
I love that.
Awesome.
And I watched some random video of you once, and I forgot to bring it up before, where you said that you were choosing like a name for yourself, and you mentioned Tiffany. You always wanted the name Tiffany.
Yes. And it's not lost on me that you are Tiffany. And actually, my daughter wanted to be Tiffany too.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's Tiffany. Yeah.
We just wanted, I think you go through this phase. Sometimes kids go through this phase where you just want just a different name. And I just felt like Tiffany was easier. And it's like breakfast at Tiffany. Tiffany's so special. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.
It's my pleasure.
So make sure to keep listening and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at A Holistic Dose on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more fun. And thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with more unfiltered fun next time on A Holistic Dose.
See you next time.
Thanks. Bye.